From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Tuesday will host German Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier for a full day of state visit ceremonies and high-level engagements in Manila. The program will begin in the morning when President Marcos leads the wreath-laying ceremony at the Rizal Monument in Rizal Park. The two leaders will offer honors to Dr. Jose Rizal, setting a solemn tone for the visit. President Marcos will then preside over the arrival honors at the Kalayaan grounds in the Malacañang compound, where military courtesies and national anthems will formally welcome the German head of state. The delegation will then proceed to the reception hall of Malacañang Palace, where President Steinmeier will sign the official guest book, with President Marcos hosting the ceremonial moment. The two leaders will then move to the music room for a tete-a-tete and restricted meeting, where they will begin private discussions on bilateral priorities. After the tete-a-tete, President Marcos will host the Philippines-Germany bilateral meeting in the State Dining Room, where both sides will tackle cooperation in defense, renewable energy, maritime security, trade, and people-to-people exchanges. By noon, the leaders will convene at the President's Hall for the presentation and exchange of signed agreements, followed by a joint press conference where they will announce new areas of collaboration and reaffirm their commitment to strengthening ties. Soon after, President Marcos will lead the exchange of gifts in the ante room, continuing the tradition of goodwill between Manila and Berlin. A photo opportunity will follow at the reception hall, capturing the historic visit and the partnership between the two nations. President Marcos will then host a state luncheon in honor of President Steinmeier and the First Lady at the ceremonial hall of Malacañang Palace, celebrating the enduring friendship between the Philippines and Germany. The last visit by a German head of state was undertaken by German President and Mrs. Heinrich Lübke in 1963. President Marcos had a working visit to Berlin on March 12 to 13, 2024, where he met with then German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, marking the 70th anniversary of Philippines-Germany diplomatic relations established on October 8, 1954.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. returned to the quake-stricken Soc-Sargent region on Monday, making his second visit in less than a week to personally assess conditions on the ground and ensure that government assistance continues to reach families affected by the magnitude 7.8 earthquake that hit southern Mindanao on June 8. The President visited an evacuation center in Glan, one of the hardest-hit municipalities, where he spoke with displaced residents and oversaw the distribution of relief goods from multiple agencies. President Marcos monitored the rollout of family food packs and hot meals prepared through the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD's mobile kitchen. A total of 453 beneficiaries in Glan received 5,000 pesos each under the Assistance to Individuals in Crisis Situations, or IX program. The Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office, or PCSO, also distributed 350 Charitimba kits containing essential household items for affected families. As part of the government's continuing rehabilitation initiatives, President Marcos turned over 20 million pesos from the Socio-Civic Projects Fund to the local government of Glan to help accelerate recovery programs. To strengthen communication lines in affected areas, the President also provided a Starlink satellite internet unit, which will support coordination for relief, recovery, and rehabilitation operations. Earlier in the day, President Marcos conducted an aerial survey of quake-hit communities in Sarangani to assess the extent of damage. He then inspected the Sapu Masla Bridge in Malapatan, one of the structures damaged by the quake, which reopened to traffic on June 10th after emergency repairs and clearing operations. The chief executive also visited the Sarangani Provincial Hospital, where he led the turnover of patient transport vehicle to boost the province's medical response capacity. Monday's trip marks President Marcos's second visit to the region since the earthquake. On June 10th, he was in General Santos City to inspect damaged schools, hospitals, and ongoing relief operations. The palace says the president will continue to monitor the situation closely as government agencies sustain relief and rehabilitation efforts across affected communities.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Monday said the government is now shifting from emergency response to full-scale rehabilitation and relocation in areas devastated by the magnitude 7.8 earthquake in Mindanao, even as search and recovery operations continue in the hardest-hit communities. Speaking during a situation briefing in General Santos City after inspecting damage in Sarangani, the president said local governments are still completing their assessments while responders continue to look for missing residents. President Marcos noted that engineers are inspecting hospitals, schools, and government buildings to determine which structures remain safe. He said restoring medical services is a priority, along with the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH's ongoing engineering evaluations. The president assured local officials that the national government will remain in close coordination with local government units, or LGUs, and will provide additional support as new needs emerge. He urged local leaders to immediately relay any requirements so agencies can respond without delay. President Marcos also announced 278 million pesos in financial assistance from the Office of the President for severely affected local governments. Sarangani and General Santos City will each receive 50 million pesos. South Cotabato and Sultan Kudarat 30 million pesos each, Davao Occidental and Glan 20 million pesos each, and Zamboanga 50 million pesos. Other affected LGUs may receive between 3 million and 10 million pesos. He added that 50 million pesos has already been released through the Local Government Support Fund or LGSF for the repair of damaged government buildings and hospitals, including facilities in Alabel and Glan.
We have put aside 278 million for the local governments who have been hit hard by the earthquake. So Sarangani and Jansan will receive 50 million, South Cotabato, Sultan Kudarat 30 million, Davao Occidental and Glan 20 million each, Zamboanga will get 15 million. And those others, yung ibang apektado na lokal na pamahalaan, ay meron pa rin, may pondo pa rin, we can give up to from 3 to 10 million for everyone. Sa ilalim naman ng LGSF, maglalabas tayo ng 50 million kaagad para sa pagpaayos ng mga government building at sa isang ospital, kagaya sa Alabel at saka sa Glan. So we will need to use that immediately. Narinig naman ninyo ang DSWD, maayos ang ating supply pagdating sa mga relief goods. At yung mga isolated na lugar, pipilitin natin makapunta. Yung mga ibang barangay na talagang walang madaanan, ay magpapalipad na lang muna tayo ng helicopter. Yung iba, kung pwede, kung kaya sa dagat, gagawin din namin yun. But whatever it takes, kailangan, mahirap, hindi namin kinakalimutan dahil walang pagkain ng mga yan eh. Kaya walang makakain yung mga yan. Kasi kung meron man silang na itabi, by now nauubos na yan o baka nasira pa sa lindol. Kaya we'll just keep providing. Kagaya ganun nga ang sabi ko, kahit na nag-evacuation center at umalis na sa evacuation center, nakikitira sa kanilang kamag-anak o kaibigan, ay patuloy pa rin ang provide namin ng at least emergency basic goods. At ang DSUD, kagaya na nabanggit ni Secretary, is magbibigay ng 30,000 cash assistance sa mga totally destroyed na residences. Ang DPWH na ay yun ang mga inuuna rin yung mga tulay, malapatan yung sa Pumasla, yung Sarangani, Davao del Sur Coastal Road, sa Glan din. Yung mga isolated barangay ay karamihan may access na pero may mga sitio pa raw. So yun ang titiyakin natin, pipilitin natin na makarating ang mga relief goods.
Restoring access to isolated communities remains a top priority. The President said the government is working to reopen key routes, including the Sapu-Masla Bridge and major roads leading to Glan and remote barangays. He said helicopters and sea transport will be deployed to reach areas cut off by landslide and road damage. The DPWH reported that 17 bridges and 11 major roads have already reopened, with inspections ongoing in hospitals, schools, and other facilities. The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, said 44 evacuation centers remain open, sheltering more than 4,000 families, while additional preemptive evacuations are underway due to landslide threats in Jose Abad Santos. The agency has distributed 125,000 family food packs in a week and maintains a stockpile of 4.8 million food packs nationwide. Families whose homes were totally destroyed will receive cash assistance, while relief operations will continue for evacuees staying with relatives. The Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, or DSUD, reported that 58,000 houses were damaged, including 11,000 totally destroyed. The agency plans to distribute shelter kits, construction materials, modular housing units, and provide loan moratoriums for affected borrowers. Health authorities report 74 deaths and around 1,600 injured across affected regions. Field hospitals have been deployed to Balut Island, Gland, and other communities, while medicines, hygiene kits, vitamins, and medical supplies are being distributed. Water filtration systems and chlorine tablets are also being deployed to prevent waterborne diseases. The Department of Education, or DepEd, said around 617 classrooms were totally damaged and will need to be rebuilt. Nearly 22 million pesos has been allocated for cleanup and repairs, while flexible and distance learning will be implemented. Temporary learning spaces and printed modules will be provided to affected students. Despite the shift toward rehabilitation, President Marcos urged residents to remain vigilant, warning that continuing aftershocks still pose serious risks.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, the death toll from the magnitude 7.8 earthquake in Mindanao has climbed to 65, while 1,447 people are reported injured. In a press briefing, Office of Civil Defense, or OCD, Assistant Secretary Rafi Alejandro said the quake has severely affected 176,186 families across 512 barangays in Regions 11, 12, and Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, or BARM. Damage to infrastructure has now reached 1.13 billion pesos, including 131 bridges and thousands of homes.
So for the affected population, meron na po tayong close to 161,000 families or 624,000 individuals as affected, coming from 432 barangays, no? So currently we are operating 37 evacuation centers housing some 3,200 families or 14,200 individuals, no? But we have more or less 14,000 families who are outside evacuation centers, and that is close to 56 or 57,000 individuals. So in terms of casualties po, as of this morning, we have 65 dead casualties and 36 missing, no, reported. That is from regions 11 and 12, and we have 1,400 injured or reported individuals na merong injuries or illness.
Emergency teams continue to deliver aid, conduct search and rescue and retrieval operations, and carry out rapid damage assessments in hard-hit areas, particularly in Jose Abad Santos and Glan, where landslides have been reported and conditions remain dangerous. The OCD said relief operations will remain continuous, with food, medical services, and other essential assistance being deployed to affected communities. Rehabilitation efforts are also underway as authorities work to restore access, rebuild damaged structures, and support displaced families.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has called Congress to a special session on June 17th to act on priority measures aimed at strengthening social protection, education, healthcare, and ensuring rapid government response amid ongoing national challenges, including the recent Mindanao earthquake. Through Proclamation No. 1318, the President urged lawmakers to act on several priority bills, already in advanced stages but still pending. President Marcos said urgent action is needed as the country continues to deal with energy issues and recovery efforts following the magnitude 7.8 quake. President Marcos said the needs of the Filipino people do not pause when Congress is not in session, stressing that the need to support students, senior citizens, children, and families affected by disasters. Among the measures up for deliberation are the National Center for Geriatric Health Act, amendments to the GAS TPE and the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, the Assistance to Individuals in Crisis Situations Act, the Last Mile Schools Act, amendments to the Masustansyang Pagkain para sa Batang Pilipino Act, the proposed Anti-Political Dynasty Law, and the Presidential Merit Scholarship Program. The special session will also allow the Commission on Appointments to act on pending cabinet, military, and foreign service appointments. Malacañang expressed confidence that lawmakers will set aside politics and focus on measures that deliver timely and long-term benefits to Filipinos, even as tensions continue to simmer in the Senate.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Monday extended birthday greetings to United States President Donald Trump, expressing hopes for even stronger Philippines-U.S. relations in the years ahead. In a message posted on his official social media accounts, President Marcos wished Trump good health, happiness, and continued success, noting the American leader's influence on both domestic and global affairs. President Marcos said Trump's leadership continues to shape the direction of the United States at a consequential moment in its history, adding that he hopes the long-standing alliance between Manila and Washington continues to grow stronger. Trump is marking his 80th birthday by hosting a UFC event on the White House lawn. The Philippines and the United States maintain a decades-long treaty alliance under the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, strengthened in recent years through expanded Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement or EDCA sites, increased joint military exercises, and deeper cooperation on economic and regional security issues.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to hold a bilateral meeting in Kazan, Russia, where food and energy security are expected to take center stage. The talks will happen on the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN-Russia Commemorative Summit on June 17 to 18. In a press briefing, ASEAN 2026 Philippines spokesperson and Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA Assistant Secretary Dominic Xavier Imperial said, the meeting coincides with the 50th anniversary of Philippine-Russia diplomatic relations. Imperial noted that both leaders are expected to focus on food security and energy cooperation, areas of mutual concern as global supply chains remain volatile. He added that President Marcos and Putin will also exchange views on regional and international developments affecting global food and energy markets. The bilateral meeting will take place as President Marcos, serving as ASEAN chair, co-chairs the commemorative summit with Putin to mark 35 years of ASEAN-Russia dialogue relations. According to the DFA, the summit will review the progress of the ASEAN-Russia Strategic Partnership and discuss cooperation in energy, food security, science and technology, trade and investment, tourism, education, cultural exchanges, and people-to-people ties. Imperial confirmed that this will be President Marcos's first visit to Russia as president. The summit is also expected to adopt key documents, including the Kazan Declaration 2026 and the ASEAN-Russia Comprehensive Plan of Action 2026 to 2030, which will outline future cooperation. Beyond food and energy, discussions between President Marcos and Putin may also touch on tourism, education, science and technology, and cultural programs as both countries seek to deepen bilateral ties. The Philippines and Russia established diplomatic relations in 1976, marking 50 years of partnership this year.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., in his capacity as ASEAN Chair, will co-chair the summit together with President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation. The meeting will bring together the leaders of ASEAN and Russia to commemorate 35 years of dialogue relations and to chart the future direction of this partnership. The ASEAN-Russia Commemorative Summit holds particular significance for the Philippines. It will mark President Marcos's first visit to the Russian Federation as president. Set in the midst of the 50 years of diplomatic relations this year between the Philippines and Russia. During the summit, ASEAN leaders and President Putin are expected to review the progress of ASEAN-Russia strategic partnership and discuss ways to further strengthen cooperation in areas of mutual trust, particularly on biosafety and biosecurity, outer space and satellite applications, energy and food security, science and technology, trade and investment, tourism, education, and people-to-people exchanges. The summit is likewise expected to adopt several key outcome documents. These will guide ASEAN-Russia cooperation in the years ahead. These include the Kazan Declaration 2026, which will articulate the shared vision of ASEAN and Russia as we commemorate 35 years of partnership, as well as joint statements on energy and on cultural cooperation. The leaders are also expected to adopt the ASEAN-Russia Comprehensive Plan of Action 2026-2030, which will serve as the principal roadmap for advancing cooperation across the political security, economic, and socio-cultural pillars of the partnership. On the margins of the summit, the President will also hold a bilateral meeting with President Putin. The discussions will center on the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations between the Philippines and Russia. The meeting will likewise provide an opportunity to explore ways to further strengthen cooperation in areas of mutual interest, particularly energy security and food security. As ASEAN Chair, the Philippines remains committed to strengthening ASEAN's external relations, ensuring that the region's engagement with partners continue to advance ASEAN centrality. And as Chair, the Philippines continues to carry this responsibility, ensuring that the summit yields meaningful and forward-looking outcomes for our peoples.
That was Department of Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary Dominic Xavier Imperial.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Senate President Pro Tempore and Acting Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian welcomes the agreement reached between the United States and Iran, saying the development is expected to help stabilize the global energy market. Gatchalian noted that the anticipated reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and the uninterrupted flow of petroleum products could ease inflationary pressures and help temper the rise in consumer prices. He said this would bring much-needed relief to Filipino households that have been burdened by high fuel costs since March. But the senator warned that government should not waste this opportunity. He stressed the need to use this period of stability to strengthen the country's long-term energy security. Gatchalian underscored the urgency of accelerating renewable energy projects to reduce the impact of future supply disruptions. He said the recent crisis shows that true national sovereignty cannot be achieved without a stable and secure energy sector. The acting Senate President assured the public that the Senate is ready to push measures that will attract more investments and ensure a sufficient, affordable, and reliable energy supply for all Filipinos.
Dateline Malacañang.
Department of Migrant Workers or DMW Secretary Hans Leo traveled to Sibalom, Antique on June 15th to personally extend the government's condolences and assure continued support for the family of overseas Filipino worker or OFW Ron Jean Gervoso, who died in Lebanon. During the visit, Secretary Kakdak apologized to the family over the incident involving the mistaken identification of the remains of OFWs repatriated from Lebanon. He emphasized that the government stands with the bereaved and is committed to helping them through every step of the process. The secretary said President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. instructed him to personally convey the government's condolences and ensure that all necessary assistance is provided while the family grieves. He added that the DMW Regional Office 6 and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA will continue coordinating with the family until the OFW is laid to rest properly. The DMW also vowed to hold accountable anyone found responsible for the mishandling of the remains. The labor attaché in Lebanon has been directed to coordinate with authorities and pursue the appropriate legal actions. Secretary Kakda also met with Sibalom Mayor Gian Carlo Oxenia to strengthen coordination on legal, financial, and welfare assistance for the Gervoso family. He said this forms part of the government's ongoing commitment to protect OFWs and ensure their families receive full support, especially during moments of profound hardships.
Dateline Malacañang.
The National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, is now pursuing the individuals behind last week's hacking of the Senate and House of Representatives websites. In a press briefing, NBI Director Melvin Matibag confirmed that investigators have already identified the people responsible, saying they belong to the same group linked to previous attacks on government websites. He said the Bureau is building strong cases and will file multiple charges once the suspects are taken into custody. The NBI stressed that the perpetrators will be held fully accountable, noting that cyber attacks on critical government platforms undermine public trust and disrupt essential services. Meanwhile, the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Council assured the public that no data or sensitive information was compromised during the breach. The agency said early containment measures prevented the hackers from accessing confidential records. Authorities added that cybersecurity teams continue to monitor government networks, strengthen digital defenses, and coordinate with law enforcement to prevent similar incidents. The government reiterated that cyber attacks will be met with swift investigation and prosecution as part of its broader effort to protect public institutions and digital infrastructure.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, reported that all 28 people aboard a motor yacht that ran aground in Tubataha Reef's Natural Park are now safe. In an interview, PCG spokesperson Commodore Noemi Kayabyab said the vessel MY Philippine Siren 2 left Puerto Princesa last Wednesday for a diving expedition with 14 divers, 9 Americans, 3 Germans, and 2 Filipinos, along with 14 Filipino crew members. According to Kayabyab, the yacht was securely moored to an anchor buoy when a sudden squall hit, pushing the vessel aground roughly 7.2 nautical miles northeast of Tubataha Reef. Coast Guard teams quickly installed an oil spill boom around the yacht as a precaution. As of Monday morning, no oil leak has been detected. Kayabyab emphasized that all vessels operating in Tubataha must secure clearance from the Tubataha Management Office, and in the event of any maritime incident, operators should immediately contact the PCG. She also highlighted the Coast Guard's 10 to 30 doctrine, deploying small assets within 10 minutes and larger vessels within 30 minutes of a distress call. With the school year opening this week, PCG Commandant Rear Admiral Ronnie Hill Gavan has ordered stricter pre-departure inspections nationwide to ensure no vessel sails beyond its authorized passenger capacity. Kayabyab also urged the public to stay updated on Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration or PAGASA weather advisories and to follow local rules on the mandatory use of life jackets, especially when riding motorboats and other small watercraft.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.